We are still working on getting people over from the invitees or the attendees over to the panelist side. May I start with roll call and we can start to get the meeting going?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and start roll call.
Joanna Anaya. Johannes Camino. Johannes Camino. Rebecca Estrada.
Present.
Bryn Davis.
I'm here.
Dale Decker.
Here.
Deborah Heckus.
Here.
Philip Ingram. Mark Lee. Deborah Moore.
John, you're getting a little bit of feed, like back feed when you speak. I don't know if anyone around you has theirs on too, so it might be catching it.
Yes, if we can have the WIOA team members, please mute themselves as we move forward. Thank you very much. Thank you, Veronica. Yashoda Naidu. Mr. Chair.
Yes, I'm present.
John Rockwell. Carlos Romero. Mathis Cynic.
Present.
Ashley Long.
Present.
Kelly Ropke Orth. Director Gallup.
Present.
Deputy Secretary Clark, John Clark.
Present.
Kobe Wilson.
Present.
Carla Krugler.
Present.
Paul Espinosa.
Present.
Secretary Nair.
Present.
Director Martinez. Director Carmela Martinez. Senator Carrie Hamblin. Daniel Slagle. Commissioner Crunk.
Here.
Sanchez.
Present.
Director Trapp.
Here.
Secretary Arsenio Romero.
Hi, I have control of my mic now. This is Director Martinez from Human Services.
Thank you. Secretary Romero. Mr. Chair, right now, we do not have quorum. We are too shy.
Too shy. All right.
Hold on. Mr. Chair, I do see Johannes Camino on the panel here. Johannes.
Hey, yeah, good morning, John. I didn't hear my name, but I'm present. I'm here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. We are short on quorum right now.
All right.
So with that said, Mr. Chair, we can actually skip over the first two items as far as approving the agenda and approving the minutes of the last meeting. If we would like to go straight into discussion, we may do that as we continue to monitor the attendees. And if we have quorum, then we can kind of come back to that.
All right. Yeah, just keep us updated on that. So without the quorum, I guess we are meeting as a subcommittee of the whole. I think I got that right. So we'll just go over our discussion items, skipping over items 2. Well, I guess start off with number 1. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We don't have any new members, so we'll move forward. We'll skip 2 and 3 and move on to item 4, local area designation. Margarito, is that you?
It
Max?
would be, yeah, it would be Mr. Chair. We're looking for him.
Okay,
John, do you see him on the list? I don't see him on the attendee list.
maybe he assumed he wouldn't have to log on right away.
Let me go find him. I'll be right back.
I see him as a participant.
I see him, he's on now.
Mags, are you there?
Okay, he's having some logon troubles. He's trying to get on right now.
So I
Sure.
do hear him. So Mags, if you can hear, you are on mute. All right, Mr. Chair. Margarito Aragon is having technical issues right now.
Okay,
Can we go on to the next agenda item?
yeah, let's just do that. Moving on to item 5, the 2024 state plan. So that is something that we need to work on this year. I think most of us already know that. John, if you want to go over the process and what we'll be doing more specifically this year, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. Yes, we recently started our kickoff meeting with our vendor, which would be Deloitte, in helping facilitate the state plan for the 2024 combined state plan. With that kickoff, we've kind of identified some action items we need to do over the next few months. We will actually begin that process Monday of next week and identifying the actual the meetings we're looking to have with our state plan partners and what we need to do to meet the objective. So what we're looking to do is actually have some identifying partners to be in this. You know, the secretary can chime in on this, but I know she's got some great ideas as far as not just bringing in state plan partners, both core and or just identified plan partners, but she's got another idea as far as what other participants we're going to invite into the state plan as participants in the public input comments and in the partner comments. So we're looking to do that. We will have more information as we move on that I will share with you over email as we progress forward. We're looking to have an update in the August meeting that we have, but ultimately what we're looking to do is to make sure we have the draft of the state plan in the board's hands in January, no later than January of next year. So that would give the board ample time to review the plan in itself and give us the approval on the February. I'm sorry, we will have the plan to you in December and have the plan approved in the February meeting, so we can submit in March of 2024. With that, I know the secretary has some different plans as far as how the plan would look like as far as a narrative. We're trying to eliminate the compliance component of what we're looking at when we submit, and we will continue to share that information with you as we move forward. So, Madam Secretary, anything else you'd like to share with that?
Sure. Thanks, John. Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody. It's good to see you all. If everyone mute, I think here. Thank you. So, I looked at the last time's plan, and I know it was assembled in the heat of the pandemic, but it was very much a check the box sort of activity. It's a compilation of information. If anybody has looked at it since it was put together, I would be very surprised. If you have, certainly, let me know. But we really think that this is a lot of time and effort to put into something that we then never look at again. So I really want to focus on making a usable document that actually has specific, achievable, measurable, time-bound goals for all of our local partners and for ourselves, and that really reflects what our community is seeing in the workforce, especially because what we're seeing now is a dynamic that we just haven't seen historically in terms of having a shortage of workers as opposed to a surplus. So what we're going to do, the basic structure, and we don't have dates for these yet, is we're going to start with a half-day visioning lab, and I believe that was done last time, but all of you would be invited to that, and it would also include leadership from our partners like DBR, and the other state agencies that are WIOA partners. And that will sort of set the big stage for the plan. We'd get your input on goals, strategies, sectors to be focusing on. We also, by that time, hope to have a good chunk of the data requests done so that we can also share with everyone who participates just the most current information on the labor market and also on the job market. So then that will be followed by what we're calling regionally focused labs. We're trying to say labs because it sounds more active than like meeting or something, something that indicates it's to be interactive. And we'll have one of those in each of our local areas. So there'll be a northern, a central, a southwest, and an eastern meeting. And at those, we would invite a broad swath of our partners, so a lot more of the first line folks who are providing these services every day. We would invite each of you to be at your regional meeting as well. And then we'll have a lot of our community partners from everything from industry councils to labor to folks who work on workers' rights issues. We want just a really broad cross section. So if you have any ideas of the professional organizations that you think should be invited, we welcome that. And you can funnel those ideas through John. And then we'll wrap up at the end with an outcomes lab where we kind of say what happened and how that information has been synthesized. And we will also be presenting that at the statewide workforce conference, which is scheduled for October 25th and 26th. And I think that's later on the agenda. And all of that will be before the report goes into final production. And as John mentioned, we also plan to have sort of a two-parter. So there'll be sort of a 20 to 25 page user-friendly report that is nice looking and easy to read and easy to follow, because we do have about 300 pages of required items that need to go into the statewide workforce plan to meet DOL's requirements. But we kind of see that as being its own document, and we need to have something that we have on the website that we share with partners, that we share when we go out looking for funding. And that'll be that more concise and friendly document. So it's ambitious, but I think it's worth it. And everyone that I've talked to so far seems engaged. Oh, one more piece I forgot. We also are going to develop sort of a 15 to 20 minute presentation and input module, I'll call it, so that if there are groups that can't send somebody to a regional meeting, we can go to their annual meeting, municipal league, just as an example, we can go to their meeting, present on what the state plan is going to look like and get some input on key areas. So there'll be a sort of we go to them component as well as bringing people together. So still lots of opportunity for other ideas on how to engage the community in this board. But the bottom line is we are going to be hoping to see a lot more of you, hear a lot more of your ideas and concerns, and roll that into a plan that then we're then looking at, every meeting to see how we're measuring up against the goals that we've set for ourselves. Thank you. Mr. Chair, you're on mute.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? And if there are, if you could use the raise your hand function, makes it easier for me. Yes, Rebecca?
I was just wondering, as you all are putting together the list of who will be invited to the table in any of those venues, or who you'll be reaching out to in order to go to their particular meetings, will you be sharing that with us as well? Because certainly we could come up with a list, but you may already have those individuals who you'll be engaging already in mind. So I wouldn't want to be someone who would tell you somebody you all have already thought about. So as those lists are being created, is there any opportunity to share those with us? So then we can look to see, oh, hey, maybe, we should think of this organization or this agency to be at the table. Is that a possibility?
Absolutely happy to do it. And we can do that by email when we're in the process of compiling those lists. Another key part in the regional meetings are going to be engaging actual users of the system. So, at least a few employer users who we've worked with in the region, and employee side users who have worked with our system. So we have some lived experience in the room. So when we do distribute the list, you'll just kind of see that as a placeholder. But if you have specific users who, if they've had a challenging experience, if they've had a great experience, we definitely want their input into the plan. Thanks, Rebecca.
Any other questions? All right, I'm not seeing any. So I just want to emphasize that this is an opportunity for board members to have some input on the direction we think the state needs to go. It's a very important thing that we do. We don't do it every year. And this kind of sets the pace for all of the regions for their plans as well. So please, if you can, attend some meetings, provide some input, because this is going to set the direction for the state for the next few years. So, all right. Now let's move on. Item 5, the secretary alluded to this, the 2024, item 6, the 2024 State Workforce Conference. Secretary, back to you.
Sure, I'm happy to do this one. I didn't know if you wanted to go back and pick up Max first since he is here, but I'm happy to do this one first.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, great. So statewide workforce conference is happening on October 25th and 26th. It is going to be in Albuquerque. It's a live event. And you probably received a survey looking for input. I know some of our members definitely gave a lot of great input, but basically we were looking to get feedback on what would be helpful for people to hear, what kind of experiences they want to have, what they want to get out of the conference. For that, then based on what we've received in those surveys, we have gotten together an agenda, and the idea is to have sort of tracks for different groups of people who will be there. And of course, you don't have to stay on your track, but then there'll be plenaries. So I'm sure you've all gone to a conference where there's sort of like a morning session where everybody's together, and then it goes into tracks, small breakout groups, and then back together. That's going to be the format. Our tracks are going to be leadership. So, that would be sort of the obvious one for all of you to go to, but we want it to be an opportunity for all the local board members to also, participate in the same sessions, hear the same stuff, meet each other, et cetera. And then there'll be a skills focused track. And that's really for our frontline folks who, need to know things about performance metrics and how to use various computer systems. And then there'll be a partnerships track where we'll really be focused on enhancing that the user experience for people who have to use multiple partners, and also the engagement experience among the partners, and then a youth track because the youth program is so unique and it has its own providers. And I think our definition of youth, of course, goes up to 24, so that includes our higher education partners. So those are the 4 tracks. We are still in the process of putting together the modules and the speakers. If you sent your input, thank you. It's all in the works. And if you still have ideas, feel free to send those to John or to me, and we'll get them on the list. Just a few more items on logistics. It will be held in the Marriott Uptown. And because we're expecting 250 to 300 people, it's a big group. So we actually have hotel room blocks at the Marriott, the Hilton Garden, the Hyatt Place, Sheraton Uptown, and the Homewood Suite. So all of those Uptown hotels have some rooms. That is, I think, about all I have. And if you need an invite or something, just let us know. Those have been going out, save the date and so forth has been going out, but our list might not always be updated. So we will make sure everybody here today is on the list. That's all.
Thank you, Secretary. Mr. Espinosa, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. The point of contact of this conference, as well as the times of the conference, and if there's any going to be information, I'm pretty sure there's going to probably be some information put out there, flyers and so forth. Them are the questions I had.
Great. So we have a little committee here, and Rebecca Cisneros has been the primary point of contact, and I'll put her information in the chat. It is scheduled for basically October 25th, 12 to 4 p.m. and then October 26th, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. So that people have a chance to sort of get into town on the 25th. And if they want to leave on the 26th, they can get back home. And I will put that contact information in the chat.
Any other questions from the board?
Thank you.
All right, I'm not seeing or hearing any. Secretary, is there a cost to attend?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is no registration fee, but there will be, obviously the travel costs, and I'm not the expert on per diem, et cetera, but I know lots of people on this call would be able to answer that question.
Got it. So at least the conference itself is open.
That's correct.
All right, thank you. And I attended the last one we had, and I did appreciate, being able to interact with people from around the state and kind of see what the different regions are doing. So I'm glad we're able to do this again. So hopefully a lot of us can attend. All right, Mags, are you there?
I am.
All right, so let's go back to item number 4, the local area designation.
Okay, so as part of the planning process, the state has to, or we have to designate our regions every 2 years. So this year, or this cycle, we've decided to put more of a concrete policy in place. So we're going to designate every odd year. So 23, 25 for the next 2 years. So in late January, we put our policy together. We sent it out to the local areas to give them instructions on how to request to either be a new region. So if they wanted to pick up counties or remove counties, or if they wanted to stay the way they were, which is in the act called the subsequent designation. So basically they want to remain their counties. They don't want to add or remove anything. So in late January, we submitted a policy to them. We had 2 forms, one form for them to fill out that if they wanted to stay the same, the other one if they wanted to add new regions, so they wanted to create a whole new region. That was in late January. We spent the first 2 weeks of February providing technical assistance to the local areas, answering their questions, getting the forms out to them. And since February, they have until tomorrow to submit their request to us to be a region. So once we get those requests tomorrow, the state has, or the staff have until the 26th of May to review, send feedback to the local areas, ask for any clarification or any additional information we may need. And then on the 26th, we will be providing a recommendation to the Secretary whether we believe they should be designated or if there should be some other action taken. To date, we haven't had any region indicate they want to change their makeup. Every other region has decided, has indicated to us they're just going to ask to remain the same, which will make it a little bit easier for us. But we are asking them for narratives and justifying why their region still makes sense. So it's more than just checking boxes. It's actually providing a labor market analysis of, does their region make sense? And how does it make sense? We're also asking them to provide a service delivery information in that to explain to us how they're actually going to provide the services or how they're providing services right now. On the 26th, we have, once we submit our recommendation, the secretary will review it and work with us on anything that needs to be adjusted. And then on June 1st, that's when the recommendation will go to the governor's office for final approval from the governor's office, saying yes or no, whether we want to, whether whatever's being asked is approved. And then there's an appeal process. After that, there's a 60-day appeal process. So a local area, if they want to appeal the decision that's made, they can submit an appeal. So right now we're waiting for tomorrow for all the regions to submit those requests to us, and then we're going to go and start reviewing those requests.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Odegon. Are there any questions? I think I see Mr. Decker. Dale.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. Can you refresh my memory and maybe some of the other board members' memory regarding how we did the, didn't we go through a process before where we suggested different region boundaries and came up with the current regions several years ago? Again, just help me out here. I'm trying to remember.
So the board did go through a process for the last, it might have been 4 or 5 years, of analyzing the workforce, the current makeup of the workforce areas and the workforce regions, and putting together a plan to determine if the current makeup right now, the four board area makes sense, or if we should collapse or expand that area or those boards. Last year, that information was, and it was a committee of the state board actually did have a lot of input in that, and we did a lot of work. There was a document that was sent to the governor's office with recommendations, and to my knowledge, that's where that process is sitting right now, which is a separate process than what's being asked of right now. So that process was the process of asking to create new regions. This one is every 2 years we have to redesignate all the local areas. So it's 2 separate processes.
Thank you.
I think I saw Rebecca Estrada next.
Yeah, and sorry, Mags, this is just, could you repeat the date that the designations will go to the governors?
We will submit to the governor June 1st.
June 1st.
And then probably the more pertinent date is a final designation approval will be sent to the local boards on June 23rd.
June 23rd.
So June 23rd is the date we would notify the board, all the boards, whether it was approved or denied.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, from the previous question, the 4 boards as they currently sit have been how it's been sitting for several years. The process that was gone through to possibly move to 2 boards, again, was discussed. There was a document, and that's just because I sit on a local workforce board as well, and was sent to the governor's office, and no action has been taken. So these 4 regions as they sit now have been this way historically.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
All right, John Crunk.
Well, I'm on the county commission. I'm also on the regional board, and I'm a little confused because we were notified on the county level that that board was realigning, those regions were realigning last year. So I understand the comment that it's been this way for quite some time, but what was all that went out last year?
To my knowledge, there was a document that went out last year with our recommendations to the governor. And it would be the governor who would have to approve that restructure. And we have not gotten any approval from the governor's office on that restructure. So nothing can, all of that work, you know, was there, but nothing will happen unless the governor decides, yes, we need to restructure the board. So nothing's changing right now, or nothing did change last year. And then this designation process, the way I understand it, all the boards are going to ask to remain the same. But that's not to say that that document is still sitting at the governor's office. So if the governor decided to resurrect that document and approve, then a restructure could happen. And I think the recommendation at that time was to go from 4 boards to 2 boards. So if the governor ever decided to resurrect that and move to a 2-board system, then we would start the process to combine the boards and create 2 new boards.
This seems like we're chasing our tail on this thing. We sit there and go through all this to do something else. And then if the governor makes her mind up that she wants to do something down the road, all this work is for naught. My comment is, it's just confusing for me to stand before the county commissioners and sit there and talk about their responsibility in these regions, and then have it hanging in limbo out there. That it's tough.
All right.
Can
thank
I
you, John.
just, oh, sorry, I was just gonna say, I think that I totally understand that comment. I guess what I would say is, because there is no action on that, there are 4 boards, we've been functioning as 4 boards. I think we just continue to function as 4 boards. And I understand that there's some frustration on that, but I think that this has been the structure under which we've worked, and we've all worked in organizations where certainly explorations have been made of possible changes and other opportunities, but sometimes things, even after those explorations, maybe changes just don't happen because they maybe do or don't make sense at the time. And so I understand this idea, but I mean, I think the responsibility that because I have to do a version of the same thing, right? So I think our responsibility to the system doesn't necessarily change too much if it's 2 boards or 4 boards. I think, I mean, that's just I only speak for myself, but you know, our responsibility to serve our constituents in the communities, I think kind of stands regardless. And then we pivot if we have to, but at this point, we've been functioning under 4 boards. The 4 boards have been what we have been working with. And I just don't feel like it's been disruptive, I guess.
Yeah, and I think to that point, there's 2 parallel tracks. Right now, we have to keep the state in compliance, and right now we have 4 boards. So every 2 years, the 4 boards have to request to be designated to maintain their designation. So every 2 years, we have to do this in order to maintain compliance with the act and with the regulations. And at the same time, there's a parallel track that has been going on for the last couple of years, where the state board and a committee of the state board has been looking at how do we redesign. So as the redesign of a workforce system conversation is happening, we still have to remain in compliance. And I think that's where, and I can see that's where it would look like we're chasing our own tail, because there's 2 parallel processes going on at the same time.
Well, I'm just concerned, and it's we try in this region I'm in to do some really good works, and I appreciate the works that Beth and these guys down here contributed make happen. It's just frustrating, and I would ask that. I was under the impression that the designation from the 4 to the 2 was a mandate from the feds. I didn't understand that it was a mandate that was state level. So that, I guess that's my confusion. And I would hope that when going forward, that we understand that I understand the compliance on this federal level, like compliance compliance on the state level, but I would love to know who's mandating what.
Okay. And just to address the comment, I think the previous board chair was, that's where the conversation started with, does the workforce system meet the needs of New Mexico currently? And that's what kicked off that multi-year process too, and that parallel process. There wasn't a mandate that came down from USDOL or from the state. I think it was just a question and a process to say, does 4 boards still make sense, or does 6 boards make sense, or do 2 boards make sense? What makes sense to help, the citizens out? What makes the most sense? And so if there was an impression that it was a compliance issue from or a mandate coming down from either USDOL or from the state, I do apologize for that, because there wasn't. It was let's see if this works, and let's analyze what's happening.
All right, it looks like Bryn, Mr. Davis, you have a question.
Well, actually, a comment, because certainly towards Dale and what Mag said, really in the previous board, the questions were asked, are we best applying the money and the resources to fit our needs? And there's a associated overhead costs with multiple boards. And then there was a regionality question. Mags, I can't quite remember, but we actually had a debate that New Mexico is geographically screwed up in that we have oil and gas in Northwest and Southeast, and we have agriculture in Southwest and Northeast, and trying to understand if we were not applying our resources or our tools in a better manner. And I think that's what came out of the board. And the question was asked, even in the prior administration, are we doing this in a manner that can be justified as the best application of money and resources? And so that's where some of these recommendations sort of came. And then I kind of put the 4 corners of the state in there. And then there was this whole, what I call Rio Grande population corridor, which had a separate set of issues. And ultimately, that's where the I'll call recommendations or suggestions came out, that there may be a better way to do this. But it was done at the request of how are we applying our resources.
Thanks, Bryn. All right, are there any other questions or comments from the board about the local area designation? All right, I'm not
Mr. Chair.
Yes, John.
Yes, sir. There are a couple of comments related to the work conference that's in the chat. If we can please share that with the board. We have one from board member Estrada and from the secretary.
Okay. So Rebecca Estrada posted, when appropriate, please send registration and hotel information. Thank you. Yeah, and that would be helpful. And then the secretary shared Rebecca's notices contact information, which if you need it, you can see it in the chat. All right, thanks, John. Okay, moving on then to item 7, labor market review. And this is Rachel Moskowitz. Rachel.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Thank you for having me, and I'll go ahead and share my screen. One moment. Oh, actually, John, do you want to show the video, the PowerPoint? Or should I do that?
Yes, Rick, we can actually make you a co-host.
I just made Rachel the co-host, so you should be able to share now.
Thank you, Veronica. Okay, you should be able to see my screen. If not, let me know. Okay,
good.
That's good.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So my name is Rachel Moskowitz. I'm the Bureau Chief for Economic Research and Analysis. And what we're going to talk about today is basically what is labor market information. We're going to talk about the New Mexico economy, and we're going to talk about resources. So I'm going to kind of do this pretty quickly. I know we're running a little bit late, and if there are any questions, feel free to interrupt. I'm okay with that, or put it in the chat. I'm not going to be able to see the chat, so if someone could either interrupt or read it for me, I'd appreciate that. Okay, so what is labor market information? Labor market information is any type of data or statistics that helps people get jobs, get better jobs, grow businesses, and help support families. So one of the most popular labor market information source that we have is the unemployment rate. We produce that in-house, and that comes out every month. And some of the other information that we have is labor force participation rate and also employment and wages. Some of the questions that we can help answer, and these are actual questions that we've received from people, is my business is expanding and I need to hire an accountant. What is the average wage for accountants in Albuquerque? How many small businesses are there in New Mexico? My child wants to become a nurse. Is that a good job? What is the unemployment rate in Doña Ana County? And also, how did New Mexico's economy perform during the COVID pandemic? We also analyzed the UI Trust Fund. And some of the questions that we get, especially from the legislature, is if we lowered unemployment insurance tax rates, how would that impact the solvency of the UI Trust Fund? So please don't ask me any of these questions now because I can't answer them, but I will be more than happy to research them for you. I'm just kidding. I know the answers. All right, so we're going to talk about the unemployment rate for New Mexico, January, starting from the beginning of the pandemic till now. The red line is the US unemployment rate, the blue line is the New Mexico unemployment rate, and the gray bar is the COVID pandemic recession. What you'll notice is that the US unemployment rate peaked slightly before ours, and at a much higher rate. And then what happened was ours stayed at a higher rate. Only recently has our unemployment rate fallen to a degree that's equal to the rest of the country. Now, what you'll notice is that what I mentioned before is that the blue rate, our unemployment rate stayed higher than the national rate. And what you'll notice is that in going back to 1976, you'll notice the same pattern. So again, the red line is the US, the blue line is New Mexico's unemployment rate, the gray shaded areas are the recessions. So what happens is that basically we're invited to the party, we arrive late, and we stay later than we should. And the party is a bad party. I know that this is being, it's a bad party, bad things happen, and we just can't stay away. So it's this pattern of, and you see it really in the 80s. A lot of these peaks are due to oil and gas booms and busts. We're very dependent on the oil and gas industry, and you definitely see that in our data. What we have here at the top is New Mexico employment levels. So we talked about unemployment, and now we're talking about employment levels, and that comes from a different survey. So the top is New Mexico employment. It's seasonally adjusted. The green line on top is the March 2020 employment. So basically it's pre-COVID levels. What this is showing is that in New Mexico, the employment levels did not reach the pre-COVID level until about December or January of this year. The lower graphic shows the US employment, and it fell, but it recovered faster, basically a year faster. Now you have to remember too that the US employment levels, you're including all 50 states plus District of Columbia and some territories. It includes some states like Texas, obviously that never closed. And then you also have states like Hawaii that basically shut down, wouldn't let anyone in. So, but the point of this, and you see it in previous recessions, is that our employment, as well as our unemployment rates, it takes us longer to recover. What this is showing is that I took the employment of all states and I normalized it to 1. Basically, everyone had a starting point. I put everyone at the same starting point, And I graphed all the states' employment percentage growth compared to New Mexico. New Mexico's is the red line. The green line is 1, which is basically the start of the pre-COVID. And what this is showing is New Mexico's employment percentage growth compared to other states. You'll see that we're at the lower part of the recovery. The beginning of the COVID recession, you'll see that our employment drop was not as deep as some other states. However, it took us longer to recover. Now, part of that is due to we're insulated by our large government sector, which both harms and helps us in certain situations, as well as our oil and gas. This graph is the same thing, but what I did was I moved it back to January 2010, just to give people a long-term viewpoint of our economy. So during the decade of 2010 to 2020, I call it as a lost decade. Our employment growth was extremely stagnant. It took a full 10 years to get out of the 2007 housing drop, that recession. And you'll see that the gray lines are all other states. That one that's really odd that goes up in August 2014, that's actually North Dakota. And they're very heavily dependent on oil and gas as well. So you'll see that as time goes on, and actually if you look at this table, if you actually go back farther, we're losing ground as time goes on. So other states are moving forward are growing at a faster rate, and we're just stagnating. And every year it just seems we're getting farther and farther away from even the middle of the pack. So I'm going to shift gears. So I apologize for that dismal forecast, but as an economist, it is the dismal science. But I do wanted to share some business information. So we compute employment by size of establishment. What this graph is showing is that most New Mexico establishments employ less than 5 workers. So 66.4% of all establishments in New Mexico have less than 5 workers. However, the group that employs the most people are companies or establishments that have between 20 and 49 employees. And 1 out of 5 employees in New Mexico work for an employer that employ 20 to 49 workers. And we come out with that. We produce this information every year. So what this graph is showing is the percent change of employment by size of establishment. The red bars are the percent change of employment from the first quarter of 2020 to the first quarter of 2021. So that's the pandemic quarter. And then the green is the percent change from the first quarter of 2021 to the first quarter of 2022. So basically what I'm showing here is the percentage drop off of employment during the initial parts of COVID, and then the percentage increase of employment as we recover from the pandemic. What this shows is that by size of establishment, how much they've recovered. You'll see, so if you look at the establishments 250 to 499, they lost 9.5% of their employment, but they actually recovered 23%. So that means that they've recovered better than, for example, the 100 to 249 grouping. They lost 13.6% of their employment, but they only recovered 1.5%. Now, it's especially drastic at the lower levels. The higher levels of employment, we don't have a lot of companies in New Mexico that employ these large groups of people, but you'll see that the 5 to 9 group, the establishments that employ 5 to 9 employees, they still have not recovered yet from the pandemic in terms of employment. This next graph is showing the employment by firm age. 80% of all employment in New Mexico works for a company that's 11 years or older. The 0 to 1 year is only 2%. Of course, that's impacted by COVID. It's typically higher than that. And you'll see that, but that's the breakdown by years that the company has been in business. Then if we look at the employment by firm age going through the COVID recession, you'll see that the huge drop during COVID, but then the recovery. And you'll see what this is showing is that those older companies have still not completely recovered from the pandemic. They're still about 15,000 short of their high pre-COVID. And this one shows it by the years, younger firms. The blue line is the 0 to 1 year firm age. You'll see those absolutely have not recovered, which makes sense. This is a really weird time to open a business. You know, with interest rates are getting higher and uncertainty in the market. So that's understandable. The red line, 2 to 3 years, they've actually recovered quite nicely. And Mr. Davis raised his hand. Yes. Oh, I think you're on mute.
If you, do you know on the smaller businesses, when they point, are we killing those businesses? I don't mean we, us, but are they dying in the market because of this? In other words, you say hiring's down. My question is, did they go out?
That's a good question. So basically what you're wanting to know is, are they dying out or are they just not opening?
Exactly.
Yeah. So we did a article a while back about business openings and closings. And surprisingly, and this was about a year ago, and the number, and that article used a different data source. And what that was showing was that businesses were actually opening at a faster rate after COVID. Now, we didn't have it by, that data was not available by size of establishment, but what I was thinking is that employers were closing their businesses, waiting out the recession, and then reopening them again. So that's actually a really good question. I'll give that, thank you for that assignment. I will work on that and provide that information to John. So basically, yeah, so that's a good one. So basically, drop in small businesses, employment, is it deaths or just lack of number? Actually, that I would have to look at that. We have that. I think I can find that data out for you. Because I can pull that.
It's my valley of death question for business all the time.
That's an excellent question, and I don't think that'll take me very long to provide you. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And then Mr. Decker.
Hey, Rachel, this is fantastic data that you're presenting to us. Congratulations. My question has to do with those companies that are small and have not recovered. Do you have NAICS code information on those? Like how many are hospitality businesses or restaurants? What types of businesses aren't reopening or are not recovering to pre-COVID levels? Because I think that would inform, you know, really kind of where there could be holes in the marketplace, but also from a job training point of view. Is it because they can't find workers? What's driving that lack of recovery?
Again, we did an article about that, and it did have it broken out by industry. Well, first of all, Mr. Decker, thank you for your question. And then for those kudos, your check is in the mail. Just want to let you know that. Snail mail. I want to get back to you on that one.
Okay.
We do have that information. but I might have to pull it out of our system. So that one will be coming to you as well. So I appreciate the assignment.
Yeah, and I guess the other question is, we've always heard that there's an underemployment issue, particularly in kind of the service industry, where we have people who are overqualified for the jobs that they take on. Do you think that because of the recovery in some of these more established firms that might have had more job openings commensurate with somebody's skill level, and that the underemployment, demand kind of also tanked post-COVID? And it's just, again, an observation. I don't know.
Well, the thing is, I'm a little confused about your question, but really, COVID, I mean, imagine if you were to spin a top, and you know how toward the end of right before it falls, it just is this, what's seemingly this unpredictable movement back and forth before it falls. We're actually, that's how now a physicist would say that's not, that you can actually map that, but that's what it looks like. It's this unsettling of the labor market. There's so much that shifted during COVID. People left their employer. There's still this misalignment of supply and demand. So it just still hasn't settled yet. And then we have this unnerving information coming out that, according to the Federal Reserve, that a recession is coming. So it's like, how many punches can our economy take before we're down and out? So, I just think that the dust hasn't settled yet on the realignment of the labor market.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And Mr. Trapp, you had your hands raised, and I know we had a couple comments in the chat.
Yeah, great question. A great report. If I heard you correctly, you were saying that the smaller businesses recovered better than the larger businesses. So my question is, could it be that the larger businesses were actually becoming smaller businesses?
It could be. That's correct. So over time, if we don't, it could be. And the reason being because the data does not show a company's movement over time. So for example, they could be, in 1 year, they could have 20 employees, and the following year there'll be 50 employees. So they'll be shifting different categories, or their employment by firm age could shift over, but their firm age can change over time. So that's actually a very good point. And again, every single time I give a presentation, the audience asks me questions I can't answer, and you guys are smarter than I am, and it hurts my ego, but this is
Sorry about that.
I'll get over it. It's pretty big. So, but yes, the answer to your question is yes, that could happen. You're right.
Okay, that would be an interesting data element to track. So
right. Okay. I'll add that to my list. Now that one, that would take a long time to do, but I actually think that's a great analysis. So yeah. Okay.
I had my gallbladder removed yesterday. I guess I still have a lot of gall to ask the question or ask that of you, but
yeah.
It didn't work.
they left some of it in you. I'm sorry.
They did. They did.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So
great.
okay, and there's a couple of items in the chat. Can I just, I'm just gonna click on it. Let's see here. I'm still going to look at it.
So there's a question about the article that you were referencing, and then the secretary said that they would send it out.
Yeah.
And then there was a specific question from DJ Heckes. She is saying that she is struggling locally to find a client relations specialist that handles existing customer base and to service repeat customers. And she asked, why is that?
Okay, so as an employer, and actually on the worker side and the employer side, it's changed. The environment's changed. So you don't need to put this in the chat. I'm not interested in your, yeah, that's exactly, okay. Are you in my head? Are you in my head? So 40 to 43,000 base. Actually, if you send me your email address, I'll send you my resume. How's that? Would that help? Except I don't have good client relations. Oh, I was just kidding, but I don't know. I'm just kidding. Maybe I'm not. I don't know. Did you have a problem before? So the 40 to 43,000 base, no, okay. The 40 to 43,000 base, that's actually close to the median of the state. So what we've noticed is that you might have to increase wages. People might have found your pool of workers may have been interested in working in other industries. There are some people that are still afraid of, they're sitting on the sidelines of the labor force. So there is definitely a drop in the supply. We're still having a bleeding of population out of the state. And what we're going to be doing is we're actually seeing, and this might not be your target audience, we're actually coming out with an article in our next labor market review of how many people move to the cannabis industry. So that's really interesting. So if you don't get the labor market review, sign up for it and you'll see the impact that's had on your labor supply. I hope that you posted this position with our Workforce Connection Center office. I'm assuming that you have because you're on the board. So know how to do this. Oh, okay. What a great opportunity, because what our Workforce Connection Centers do is they will help you find someone to fill that position. So I am going to take down your email address. Actually, oh, thank you. Oh, that's our labor market review. Thank you, Secretary. John, can you take the client relations specialist information and then all this information so we can contact her with our, what city are you in, Ms. Heckles?
He's in Albuquerque, Rachel.
Oh, okay. So someone in our Workforce Connection Center in Albuquerque can help you. Let me take this down, because that's what we do. We don't just give out unemployment. We also help people find jobs, help people find better jobs, help grow your business, and overall take care of the citizens of New Mexico. Okay, so your client relationship list. So I'm actually not done. Do I have time to keep going or no?
Yeah, you can keep
Okay.
going.
All right. Thank you so much. These are great questions. Notice I haven't answered any of them. Okay. I don't know. My boss is on the call here. She might tell me to apply. Just kidding. Okay. So I'm going to keep going here. Okay. Any other questions before I switch gears? Any other questions about the economy?
Yes, I've got one real quick, Rachel, for you.
Yes.
Are you going to talk about labor force participation rates?
No, I'm not. Do you want me to?
Yeah.
Can you do
I
it
mean,
next?
between us chickens on the call here, we're about 6 to 7% less than the national average on our labor force participation rates. And if you just do a back of the napkin calculation, that's 35 to 40,000 people that are not participating in the workforce, that are of workforce age. So it's this conundrum and of people who aren't in the workforce yet. We've got this tremendous unmet need of workers, and I don't know how to resolve those things or how to reconcile them, but it seems like something that is an ongoing issue for New Mexico.
I think maybe what we could do with that is have a separate presentation that dives into the labor force participation. So I think that, yeah, that is a very big question for the board and the entire state. And that way we could also have somebody prepared to provide that information. Would that be all right?
Absolutely.
Yep.
So we did an article. I know the secretary has your hand up. We did an article on the labor force participation rate. I'll put that, once I'm done with this presentation, I'll put that in the chat. It needs to be updated, but basically people are leaving the state. Wages are low. It's really, it's basically the number one reason why our labor force participation rate is low, and it always has been lower than the national average, but until recently, people have been leaving the state. People are gone. Anyway, Secretary.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. So I just wanted to also just give a little background information and some kudos to both John and the chair. We got together before this meeting to talk about ways to engage the board better, and one of them was, and then we've had an ongoing conversation about how to share Rachel and the economic research and analysis teams work more broadly, because they do so many cool things, but not enough people know about them. So we have this idea to put ERNA on the agenda for these meetings, in which I think it shows that this has been of great interest. I think the idea is that we'll keep ERNA. It doesn't always have to be Rachel. She's got a team, but you would miss her sense of humor. But we can have presentations like this at each meeting. I think it helps to engage on a lot of different levels. And then Dale, specifically to your question on labor market participation, I've been presenting that information more than probably any other thing based on the older stuff that we have. And it started, that data is starting to feel a little dated. So I like the idea of doing something more current before we come back to you with that. But I'm also happy to send you the, or I guess Rachel send you the link to that old report, which is basically what I used to present on it. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a great team. In fact, they're smarter than me. So maybe you'll get some of these answers instead of me just writing them down and doing them later today. So thank you. Appreciate all that homework. Okay. Any other
Rachel.
questions? Yes.
Yes, we do. Somebody in the Q&A asked, well, they said that they were very interested to see that bleed of labor force due to the cannabis industry. Do you have any info on that, or is that something that we can give you some more homework with?
Oh, no. We know. So I'm gonna do something interactive. I want everyone to guess the bleed. Okay, so as of the fourth quarter of 2022, how many people do you think were bled out of other industries in the state? So here's so here's the question. And if you win the question, then you get my admiration for the next half hour. So the question is, so how many people did the cannabis industry pull from other industries as of the second quarter of 2020, fourth quarter of 2022?
27%.
Well, no, I need a number. I need a number.
Oh, like how many people?
Yeah, actually it's the third quarter of 2022. Yeah, so how many people went from a business, whether it be restaurants, education, how many people left that industry and went to work in a cannabis firm in New Mexico from the third quarter of 2022?
5,339.
Anyone else?
21,240.
Anyone? One more. I'll get one more.
12,800.
No. Okay, so unfortunately, Mr. Decker is the closest. You know what I should do as an award is take away one of your assignments. That's what I should do. So listen to this: 4,500 people total work in the cannabis industry in the third quarter of 2022, and 50% of those, 55% were pulled from other industries. So it's about a little over 2,200. That's it. Isn't that weird? I was expecting higher figures. But anyways, that's a little teaser to subscribe to the Labor Market Review and read it when it comes out on May 26th. We have another question. Oh, 200,000. Yeah, 12,000. Yeah, not even close. We were very, very surprised. Very surprised. A little disappointed. because there's like 3 cannabis companies, like seriously, like down the street in one block. Okay, I'm going to continue because the longer I stay, the more assignments you guys give me. Okay, so I'm going to go through LMI resources you can use. We got lots of publications. We have data dashboards. You can pull the data yourself. We can show you how to do this, or if you have people, we can show your people how to do it. Really easy. We have Career Solutions, which is a career exploration tool. It was specifically written for high school students, but we've noticed that some adults are using it as well. Really interactive. It's pretty neat, big buttons. And the Why Work, which is a budgeting tool. You pick the city you want to live. It asks you 10 questions, such as, what type of house do you want to live in? Are you going to go out to eat, or are you going to eat at home? What type of clothing do you want to buy? Do you want a new car? Are you going to take the bus? And then it spits out a number, which is the amount of money that a person needs to earn to live that lifestyle. And then you go into the Why Work, which was shown on the previous slide, and it'll spit out all the occupations that paid that amount. And it's all New Mexico data. We have some new things, new products. One of them is our labor market information tips. We have some videos on how to access labor market information. The next one we have, which you may be especially interested in, are these New Mexico County profiles. So over the next year, we're highlighting 3 counties. We're going in alphabetical order. So in February, we covered some of the C counties. And the March one, we covered Debaca, Doña Ana, and I think maybe in Eddy County, and talks about just county profile, population, education level, gross domestic product, and compares it to the state as a whole. So that's really interesting. Here's some websites, and here is my phone number and email address that you can contact me. And you have this slideshow, and I'm going to stop sharing, and I'll open for questions, and I'll hang out and provide these links in the chat, and I'll also send them to John to forward to you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Any final comments or questions from the board? And I imagine we can, John, we can send that out, the presentation out to the board if people want to review it. All right, any final questions, comments?
Oh, Mr. Davis, you're my fave. After Mr. Decker, you're my fave.
I think I see Paul Espinoza with a question.
Well, it's not a question, it's a comment, and that's a very good that you had a lot of information put out, and I thank you. And we took you that. I took a lot of notes, and that helped a lot because we just recently had a big job fair here at American Legion Post 13, 26th of April, and it was a big success. Thank God to Workforce Solutions and all the support they have given us veterans and opened up to the community. And there was a lot of people that showed up to this. We had 55 employers show up with a minimum of 15 jobs apiece. And we had quite a good turnout out here, and it was a good success. And along with that information that speaks for itself that she just put out, helps out a lot throughout the state. And I took a lot of good notes, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. Appreciate the feedback. Anything we can do to help.
All right, I think John next.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out something that is becoming very apparent to those of us in some of these resort areas around the state. And everything that's been talked about has an impact. And one of these impacts that we have, because we have a state income tax. I work in the insurance industry. And I'm going to say that half of my clientele driver's license do not indicate that they're residents of New Mexico. I think that I would wonder that how many dwellings, actual homes that we have in counties by region that are owned by residents in that full-time residence. We have a tremendous amount of ghosts in the state of New Mexico. And those ghosts have a lot of dependence on our streets and our roads and our communities and in our employment practices and the needs in our employment practices, but we don't ever take that into consideration. I find it a little bit discouraging, but at the same time, when we're down to where we're at right now, how does that impact us? And how does that impact us going into the future when we have more and more early retirees or retirees coming into the state, but do not become residences of the state? They live here, they spend their whole entire time here, but they're not here because we have state income tax. I think we're going to be surprised we see the numbers.
That's really interesting question, and I don't know if I can get data on that. I would have to look. I'm thinking that information would be available from Tax and Rev. I don't know if anyone, John Clark, I'm looking at you. If anyone has an idea, I'll look at the Census Department.
That's one of the things that I'm addressing here is
Yeah.
because when you go from a taxing deal, county commissioners court, the city governments, whatever, and you look for funding for the needs in your community, you look to the census. The census doesn't represent full-time, part-time residents.
Yeah, I'd have to look to see that. That's a hard data set to pull. I'd have to get back. I'd have to look into that one.
I understand, and that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. I think that we need to take and consider that gray area. For example, we've got more dwellings in the county of Lincoln than we have residents by almost 2 to 1. And that's significant when you're sitting there trying to make a determination about employment needs for all of the things that we look at. I just thought I'd bring that up to kind of put a question mark out there because it's something that just floors me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, Greg, I think you're next.
Thank you. Bad puns about getting into the weeds aside, the question about the cannabis industry bleeding people into it is kind of double-sided. I also thought that would have been a higher number. But for the vocational rehabilitation program, we're not allowed to use federal funds to support careers in the cannabis field. And we're also seeing that people who are on medical marijuana or cannabis users are being disqualified for certain types of jobs, and it's kind of limiting our employment outcomes in some instances. So that would also be interesting to look at.
Thank you.
We want to get into the weeds, really.
Yeah. Oh, I get it. Yeah, you're gonna need to go back to that gallbladder doctor. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, I guess so. They must have taken out the wrong organ.
All right, any other final questions or comments? All right, I am not seeing or hearing any. Rachel, thank you very much. That was a very informative and entertaining presentation, so thank you. All right, moving on to item, what is that, 8, our legislative update. Secretary, floor is yours.
Thanks, everybody, and thanks again to Rachel. It feels like the legislature was like 1,000 years ago, so I'll be quick. Main events for our department in this board. Number 1 is budget. We got a tiny little bit of increase in the amount of general fund that we receive, but this has become a pretty significant issue for the department. This year, the state gave all state employees a 6% raise that we have to absorb with basically flat federal funds. And there doesn't seem to be a strong appetite to give us more general funds, even though our percentage of general fund is tiny, it's 10%. So we may try to engage you as we get closer to budget season again, because if they continue to give raises at this rate, currently we are holding as much as a 20% vacancy in employment services to make up for this loss, this change. And we might try to engage you a little bit on trying to convince our legislators that they should support the workforce using state dollars. Other states, Texas, Illinois, get fully half of their funding from the state. Then we did get some special appropriations. We got $750,000 that can be used between now and I think 2024 or 25 for energy transition work to be done in concert with the Economic Development Department. We got $200,000 for a study of unemployment benefits. Some states are starting to make those available to folks who are not eligible for federal unemployment benefits. And so we'll be doing a study on that. We got $125,000 to work with some local folks on a local journalism fellowship and $75,000 to do a project in our correctional facilities that trains people up on culinary arts so that they can leave prison with some food certifications and some basic skills to get a job. Then on the capital side, we got $1.2 million statewide, which is what we asked for. So we were very happy. And that is to make various repairs and improvements to our buildings statewide. We are currently working on a comprehensive facilities plan, though, because we have never gone to the legislature with a big picture and a plan of how to really modernize all of our local workforce offices. And so we're in the process of putting that together, and we'll just certainly share that with you as that comes together. On the other bill front, our main cause this year was HB 449, which were changes to the Energy Transition Act. The Energy Transition Act passed in 2019, established a fund for displaced workers who lost their jobs as a result of, the departure from fossil fuels. And the San Juan Generating Station up in the Four Corners was the first facility to close that actually triggered that displaced worker assistance. We needed to broaden the eligibility because there were a lot of limits on eligibility written in 2019 that just didn't make sense anymore. That passed unanimously. All committees in both houses, was signed by the governor. And actually, we've been up in Farmington this week, signing people up for assistance, for continuing education, for retraining. It's been totally amazing to work with all of these displaced miners and power plant workers. And the governor gave us an additional $15 million of her junior bill money to also go into this displaced worker fund. So there's really no other state that has been handling the energy transition this way. We've been talking to our colleagues in DOE and some of the national groups to really hold this out as a model. So that was a big win for us. We got some technical changes to our Apprenticeship Act and HB 424. There were a number of bills to increase funding to apprenticeships. None of them made it the whole way through, but we would just encourage anyone who's thinking about doing that to work with us before the session this time. A lot of them were surprises to us and didn't really fit with our legislative agenda, and so it was difficult to jump in and support them at the last minute. So would encourage folks to work with us. Another change that we did not advocate for or against, but that it affects our department, is the changes to the Human Rights Act. These are changes that really clarify some of the categories related to sexual orientation, gender identity, and also makes the Human Rights Act, which is our non-discrimination law, applicable to public bodies. So that did pass and was signed by the governor. And so we'll be doing a series of trainings and outreach to help people understand how that act has changed over the next few months. We also have to do rulemaking on that. And then some significant things that did not pass. SB 11, Paid Family Medical Leave Act. I saw many of you up there for this particular item. Again, the department was neutral on this because we would be the agency that had to administer it if it had passed it. I have not seen any movement to sort of resurrect it yet, but I think we just have to wait and see. But it was quite the process. So it made it through the Senate, but died in the House. And then SB 124 was one of the governor's bills. It was returned to work. This is one of the issues that comes up for public employers when we are looking at the workforce shortage and the labor shortage is the ability to rehire people who have retired without them losing their benefits. And that also did not pass. And finally, I did get confirmed as your permanent cabinet secretary. So you're stuck with me. But wanted to thank our board member who's not here today, Senator Carrie Hamblin. She sponsored my confirmation and she did a great job. So just wanted to acknowledge her in the role that the board sort of played in that process. So thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Secretary, and congratulations. Any questions or comments? All right, I'm not seeing or hearing any, so let's move on to item 9, chair and board comments. Does anybody from the board have any comments for us? All right, I'm not hearing or seeing any. John, I know you wanted to have talk a little bit about the membership of the State Workforce Board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to spend a few minutes here just kind of updating everybody on the board and where we're at. So I'm sharing a document right now as far as what the board exists, what it is today with the membership. And if we could just focus on the yellow part, which is identifies our business members on the board. I've tried to take a chance, and I want to thank everybody here who kind of responded and hopefully gave me a little bit of clarity as far as what the sectors your business may identify as of the 2020 plan. So what we're looking to do with this is as we move into the 2024 plan, these sectors may change as far as what we're looking to do. And with that, as we look for any replacements as we bring new board members on to kind of fill in those sectors to be able to represent those sectors. As we can see right now, we are one board member short as far as a business member. And I say we, it's the state administrative entity, myself, and the previous deputy secretary, Miss Yolanda. We actually reached out to the office of the commissioners over the last summer, and asked for some assistance with some of the county commissioners as they are involved in their communities to maybe lead us to maybe some possible candidates who may have interest in the board. So this is still something we're kind of putting out there as county commissioners or even as board members. If there is someone who you think who may be a good fit, who may have interest in joining us, please send those recommendations to me. With this, we have to be aware of is that, the membership has ebbs and flows as far as stabilization. And we do try and get in front of appointments that are expiring to make sure that we can fill those roles appropriately. So with that, when we're talking about the membership, I want to kind of tie that into recently, we as a state administrative entity have recently finished up a monitoring review from the Department of Labor. And there was a few things, the feedback that I received as far as the State Workforce Board, and membership is one of them. And one of the things that they asked me to do is look at the turnaround time of filling vacancies on the board. And, there is a process with that from candidacy all the way to appointment. So I know I'll be focused on the things that I control between candidacy and recommendation to the governor's office for their process to appoint. So, but they do want us to kind of identify a time frame, if we can say that, to be able to limit those turnarounds and those vacancies on the board. So with that, I've kind of discussed this with Mr. Chair, and we will have to make sure we get the executive committee, and maybe if we have to create some other committees to be able to address this issue and maybe a couple of other issues to close these out. Two of the items I want to discuss as far as categorizing these is one is the bylaws and the policies that the state entity creates in regards to WIOA. For the bylaws, just know that we did get some feedback on the bylaws, so we will have to get the executive committee and or the bylaws committee to kind of address some of the changes we need to do again. So that'll be coming up on a future meeting. But I think the biggest part is the policies that we create for WIOA. One of the things that I could have done better in over the last few years, I've kind of ran this, is making sure that we get our WIOA policies in front of the board. And that was something that was brought to us, that as a state board, there is the responsibility to make sure that the policies we are putting out for ourselves and also for the local workforce boards, that the state board does approve these policies. So, moving forward, as we create these policies, they will be brought to the state board for a review, for approval, before we can start executing on those policies. There's several other things we can do, but I think they're small in scale to what we need to do for the state board. And we'll be sure to make sure we communicate that as we move forward. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm open to any comments or questions regarding the membership and or any other questions.
All right, any comments or questions from the board for John? All right, I'm not seeing any. All right, let's move on to item 10, public comment. And we did have somebody submit public comment. I think John sent out, they shared a document. Is Jimmy, and I apologize, Fremgen with us? I don't know if I butchered that or not. Jimmy, are you there?
I don't see anybody by that name on the attendee list. John, you're fine.
Or anybody from Respectability?
Mr. Chair, yes, I would concur with Veronica. I'm not seeing the individual on the attendee list for public comment.
Okay, well, in that case, we all have the document that they shared, so we can review that. And John, did we have any other public comment submitted?
No, sir.
All right. Well, with that, we're at the end of the agenda. If there are no objections, then this meeting of the subcommittee of the whole is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. I think our next meeting is August 3rd. Hopefully we'll be able to get everybody there so we can approve minutes and any business we need to attend to. So, but thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Josh. You have a great day and a great weekend, sir.
You too. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.